So we're going to finish up solving systems with substitution. Can someone remind me, what's the other method that we use to solve systems of equations? It's the one we learned on Monday.
Substitution.
The graphing. Yep, graphing. And remember, we talked about why graphing isn't always the easiest. Your graph can go off the edge of the paper. You need something straight to be able to make a line. You also could get a graph that doesn't cross at a nice spot. Then it's really hard to figure out the answer. So, yeah.
So Eli's been gone a little while. I'm not sure when he went out, but when kids check out, do they write down or say where they're going? I'm just
Yes.
worried about
Yeah, he went, yes.
Okay.
So 5.2 part 2. So we're going to be looking at the last part with substitution, which this time it's going to be getting a letter by itself first. Let me just show you an example. Look at this one we're going to do in a little bit. Is there a letter that's by itself? No. So what we have to do first is we have to get a letter by itself. And then we can do substitution the way I showed you yesterday. But that'll be the only extra step. All right. So situation 1, we already talked about that yesterday. Situation 1, you always have a letter by itself. You don't have to do any rearranging. Okay, so you don't have to write that because we already wrote it yesterday. Situation 1 already has an x or a y by itself. All right, so now we're going to look at situation 2. So this means the x or the y is not going to be by itself. Okay. Now, what method do you think we're going to be using again today? You think we're going to be graphing or substitution? Yeah, we're going to be doing substitution. Okay, so we're going to stick with that. So on your guided notes where it says situation 2, you're going to write down what I have right after the colon. You have to rearrange. So what that means is you have to get either the x or the y by itself. It doesn't matter which one. Do whichever one you think is easier. Next, I'm going to give you guys a couple reminders, just how you get a letter by itself. Okay. So let's say that you had an x on the same side of the equation with a single y. Okay? That would be something like this. That's an x on the same side of the equation with a single y. When I say single, I mean that there's a 1 in front of it. Plus 1 or minus 1, it wouldn't matter. Okay. But now the idea of what we have to do here is y is the easiest letter to get by itself because it only has a 1 in front of it, just a single y. So we'd want to take this 2x and somehow put it on the other side. How would you move the 2x to the right side? Because it's a positive 2x. Right. Do the opposite. If that's a positive 2x, you're going to do a minus 2x. And that would put the 2x on the other side, and you'd end up with the y all by itself. We kind of practiced that a little in the warm-up. We'll do a few more. Oh, we'll do one right now. Negative 5x. Yeah.
Is that the one we're supposed to write? We're supposed to write that down?
No, we're going to write this one. I forgot. I already had this one ready. So we'll do this one where it says example.
Like the x, it says reminders, and like do the opposite operation with x and move.
Yeah, that you're writing down under where it says reminders. You're just filling in what what the bold part is.
Also not the
You already have do the opposite operation printed, I think.
yeah, I got you.
Alright, so let's look at this one. We have an x on the same side of the y, and I want to get rid of this. How would we put the negative 5x on the other side? Yep. You're going to do the opposite operation. That's a negative 5x. The opposite is positive 5x. Okay. What's negative 5x plus 5x?
Y equals 5x plus 26.
Yeah, these are gone. Negative 5x plus 5x. And you get y equals 26 plus 5x. Now, I know normally when we do y equals mx plus b, we put the number with the letter first. We put the plus 26 at the end. When you're doing substitution, that doesn't matter. The only thing you have to do is get a letter by itself. Okay, so any question how we move that 5x to the other side? Okay, so now let's try it a little different, but now you're not going to be getting the y by itself. You're going to get the x by itself. So let's say you had a y on the same side of the equation, but this time the x has a 1 in front of it instead of the y having a 1 in front of it. Still the same idea. But this time you're going to move the y to the other side. Okay, so you always want to get the letter alone that has a 1 in front of it. Right, so looking at this equation, the x is the letter that has a 1 in front of it. So we're going to leave that one alone, and we're going to put the negative 4y on the other side. Okay. How would you move negative 4y over to the right side?
Plus 4y plus sides.
Yeah, so we're going to do plus 4y on both sides. What happens with negative 4y plus 4y?
They cancel out.
They cancel out. That's gone. What do you have on the left by itself now?
X.
X. And that's exactly what we wanted. You have to get a letter by itself. So now we have x equals, and what would we put on the right?
Negative 2 plus 7.
Yep, negative 2 plus 4y. And you can't combine negative 2 and 4y because one has a letter and one doesn't. And that's it. That's how you get a letter by itself. So any question on that one? All right, so now let's try to put it all together and do this step with the substitution step we learned yesterday. All right, so this will be situation number 2. All right. So let's look at situation number 2. So the first thing you have to decide, and you're going to put this on line 1. That's why I gave you guys a lot of lines there. You have to pick which equation you want to rearrange. You don't have to rearrange both. You only have to rearrange one of them. And the big idea is pick the simple one. Pick the simplest one that you can find. In terms of rearranging, simple means the one that has the single variable. Single variable means that there is no number in front of it. Now, we did some problems yesterday where sometimes we had 2 single variables. Well, If you have a choice, because both equations have single variables, well, we're still just going to try to choose the easiest one. Okay? To me, easier usually would mean positive. Yeah, I think negative is harder to work with. And this is the only new step for today. Once you do step 1, all the other steps we're going to write down, we've already done. Okay, so what we'll do is, I gave you guys a lot of room between each step on the guided notes. We'll write the step, and then we'll try the step on the problem. Okay, and remember, we're also going to put parentheses around things exactly like we did yesterday. So just don't forget about that. All right, so we have to pick which equation here we want to rearrange. So look for an equation that has a letter with no number in front of it. Is there an equation here that has a letter? Might not be by itself, but at least it doesn't have a number in front of it. Yeah, the one on the bottom. So this is definitely the one we want to try to rearrange. Don't try to do the top one because that's going to be harder. Okay. This one, really, what number is in front of the y? 1. Always look for that one. Okay, so now we're going to get this by itself. And we can do it in one step. What needs to go to the other side?
3x.
The 3x. How would you move positive 3x?
Subtract 3x to both sides.
Subtract 3x. That's gone. What's by itself on the left now?
Y.
Y. And what's on the right?
6. Minus 3x.
Yep. So now that is your new equation that you've rearranged to get the y by itself. So here's the first one. We didn't do anything with that. That'll be equation 1. That'll be equation 2. And now we can do this problem just like we did yesterday. Okay, but we had to do that step first. Any question how we got y by itself?
Are we going to solve the equation?
We are going to solve it, yep. So now the rest of the steps are going to be the same as yesterday. Okay, the rest of the steps are going to be exactly like yesterday. So I'll write the steps from yesterday again. Okay, just to review them. But we're not writing anything you haven't done before. Okay, so copy that down for step 2. So put parentheses in the equations just like you did yesterday. We have a little space, so let me copy down. Okay. So all I did was copy down the 2 equations from up above, so I have more space.
I think we might have a fraction.
Well, I hope not. We'll see.
And that's
If we have a fraction, you can find a teacher called Mr. Roy and blame him.
I was just wondering.
Okay. So
who is Mr. Roy?
he's another teacher.
That's fine.
So, all right. Do we have an equation, either 1 or 2, that has a letter all by itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we just did in the first step. We forced it to have a letter by itself. Which equation has a letter by itself?
2.
2. So just like we did yesterday, put parentheses around the information that comes after the equal sign. And you're going to put parentheses around what else?
Y.
The y where? There's a couple y's up there.
And
Which matter?
The which one?
No, I'm still trying to figure out this.
just the y that's with the, so 3y, you put
Yeah,
parentheses
right.
around the y.
Yeah, in the top. This is the same as yesterday.
I mean, it could have been easier if you were going
Now, the bottom equation says y equals 6 minus 3x. The bottom equation is telling you what y is. So you're going to take that information and you're going to put it into the top. When you fill that in, what's going to happen to the 2, the x, the plus, and the 3?
Those stay the same.
Those all stay the same. So, let's see. Do we want to do that at this step, or maybe we're going to do that in the next step? Okay, we're going to do that in the next step. So solve the equation now. All right, so now I'll copy it down. The 2, the x, plus, and the 3, you guys just said stays the same. But the y doesn't stay the same. What are we going to fill in from the y that we got in the bottom equation?
What was the question?
So what are we going to fill in for the y?
Oh, 6 minus 3x.
We're going to fill in 6 minus 3x. Yep. What about the equal sign? What happens to that?
You bring it down to
Yep, you just bring it down. And what happens to the 4?
same.
Bring it down. So now that's the equation we're going to solve. And it should only have one, what I mean by one letter is one different letter. Okay. This has 2 different letters. There's only one different letter in that problem. It's just x. Okay. So now we have to solve it. What's my first step to start to get x by itself there?
Distribute by
Yep. So distribute. 2x plus, what's 3 times 6?
18.
So 18. And what's 3 times negative 3x?
Negative 9x.
Perfect. Negative 9x. Okay, next step is after you do distributive property, what are you usually use 3 letters to abbreviate this step?
What about like terms?
Combine like terms. Yep, CLT. Combine like terms. Okay. Any like terms you can combine.
Yeah, negative 9 2.
So the 2x and the negative 9x. Remember, you're not moving them from side to side, you're just combining them together. What's 2x? Take away 9x.
Negative 7x.
Negative 7x. I think we're going to be good. I don't think we're going to get a fraction.
Yeah, no, it's because I put 3 instead of 4.
Alright.
Because I put a 3 for instead of equal 4.
What's our next step?
You subtract 18 from both sides.
We're going to subtract 18. So 18 minus 18 is 0. We still have negative 7x. And what's 4 minus 18?
Negative 14.
Negative 14. Okay. And now my last step to get x by itself.
Divide 7. Or just 7.
Divide each side by negative 7. So that's gone. And you get x equals, what's a negative over a negative?
Positive.
Yep, so that's also gone. What's 14 divided by 7? 2. There you go. So now we just solved the equation that we plugged into. Yeah.
Is it okay if I text my mom?
Yeah. Okay. So any questions up to that step?
Monsieur, when did we do 2?
When did we do step 2?
Yeah.
So step 2 was really just putting parentheses. We didn't really do any math in that step.
Oh, I didn't see that with it. So.
We just put in parentheses. Yep. Now we have x. What letter do we still need?
Y.
Y, and that's the last step. So take the number that you just got and then plug it back in. Which letter you plug it in for, well, it depends on which one you already solved for. We solved for x, so we're going to plug it back into x. If we had solved for y, we'd be plugging it back in to y. Now, when we started, how many equations do they always give us when we're solving a system?
2.
They always give you 2. So you can plug this number back into either equation. But my advice would be use the one that you rearranged. Because it's going to be easier. Alright, so we've got x. What's the letter we still need to find?
Y.
Okay, we need to find y. Let's scroll back up. Which equation here do you think is easier to find y in? Equation 1 or 2? Yeah. The reason 2 is easier is because the y is already alone. Okay? That's the easier one to use. If you use the other one, you will not get it wrong. It's going to take you more steps though. Okay, so let's copy that down. Y equals 6 minus 3x. And what number are we filling in for x?
2.
2. Take the 2 and fill it in right there. So we get y equals 6 minus 3. And what's going to go inside those parentheses? What is it?
2.
2. All right, let's do that out. Y equals 6 minus, what's 3 times 2? 6. Actually, and what's 6 minus 6?
0.
0. And there you go. So once you figure out x, or I'll say it this way, once you figure out one of the letters, it's usually only like 3 steps to get the other letter. Okay, the first letter takes a while to figure out. The second one doesn't. Okay, so any question on that? Now step 5, I think step 5 was just to check your answer. Or write it as a coordinate. Okay, so yeah, we can write that. So if we want to write our answer as a coordinate, what did we get for the x value?
2.
2. And what did we get for the y?
0.
0. Unless it says on the test, I don't care which way you leave it. Like if you just put a box around each answer, or you can also write it as a coordinate.
Yes, if you just go back up to number 2 real quick, I'm missing like 2 words.
For number 2?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I needed.
Now, what's special about this point? Because remember, we're solving linear systems, so it's 2 lines we would have drawn if you were going to do it that way. And what's happening at that point?
Can you repeat the question?
So if we were to solve this system by graphing, we would have drawn 2 lines on graph paper. and something would be happening at the point 2, 0 with the lines.
Where they intersect.
It would be where they are crossing. Yep, exactly. So this is probably one we could have done graphing because we got nice answers, but they didn't give us graph paper or anything like that, and they said specifically to solve by rearranging it and use substitution. All right, so let me see. It's really just 3 of the same kind of question. Let's try one more together, and then I'll see if we have time for you guys to try one, or maybe we'll do part of this one together, and you guys will do the other part together. We'll see. All right, so it says solve using substitution. Okay, so step 1. Check if you have a letter by itself on one side. Is there a letter that's already all alone on one side?
No.
No. Then we need to fix it.
No.
Okay. We need to make it so there's a letter by itself. Which equation do you think it's the easiest to get a letter by itself?
1.
Yes. And which letter?
Y.
The X. The X is going to be easier to get by itself.
And you said something Y.
We're going to move the Y. Yes.
That's fine.
Yep. So let's just copy that down. Now, if somebody said, well, I want to use the bottom equation, well, you could, but the problem is you're going to end up with lots of fractions. Okay, so it's going to be a lot easier to do the top equation and then get X by itself, because you can do it in one step. What's the only thing we have to do, and then that will be by itself?
Subtract 2y from both sides.
Just subtract 2y. There you go. Okay, so now that's going to be our new equation. I'm going to call that one equation 1. I'm going to get rid of this one. You don't have to cross this out on your paper because you probably still want to be able to read it. But I don't need that anymore. We're done with that. Okay, we're going to use the one that we rearranged. And the second one is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so which equation has a letter by itself? 1. So where are we going to put parentheses?
And then the X, and then around the 5X, the X part of that.
Okay, so yep, we're going to have parentheses right there. And where else?
After the equal sign.
After the equal sign. Yep, right there. So the parentheses are just kind of to draw our attention to the important part. So that's the important thing. X equals -7 minus 2y. Where is this -7 minus 2y? Where is it going to go?
In the number 2 parentheses.
Yep, for which letter?
X.
For x. Yep, right there. Because it tells you x equals, and they give you a formula. So plug that formula in for the x in the bottom. All right, so now, what's equation 2 going to look like? What are we going to write first?
What was the question?
So what is equation 2 going to look like after we do the substitution?
5 parentheses, -7 equal to parentheses, and 7 on the right.
What is that equal sign?
Plus 3.
What's that?
Like plus 3y
Oh, plus
equals 7.
Plus 3y equals 7. All right, so now let's check it, make sure there's only one different letter. Y, yep, there's only one letter. Okay, now we solve it. All right, what's the first thing we do?
Distribute property.
Yep. And what are we distributing?
5.
So 5. What's 5 times negative 7?
Negative 35.
Negative 35. And what's 5 times negative 2y?
Negative 10.
Negative 10y. Okay, next step after distributive property. Combine like terms. Are there any like terms?
Yeah.
Yes. What are they?
Negative 10y and positive 3y.
Positive 3y. Now remember, don't do the opposite. You just put them together. What's negative 10y plus 3y?
Negative 7y.
Yes. Good. Negative 7y.
Yeah.
Yep. Now what are we going to add?
35.
We're going to add 35. Negative 35 plus 35 is 0. What's still on the left side?
Under 7.
Negative 7
Y.
y. And what's 7 plus 35?
42.
42. Excellent. And we are going to get a nice answer. What's your last step to get y alone?
Divide by negative 7.
Yep. Divide each side by negative 7.
You would get
That's gone.
6.
And 42 divided by negative 7 is negative 6. Yep. All right. Is there anything else we have to find?
X.
Yeah, we still have to find x. Okay. So how do I get x?
Take the y, put it in for.
Yeah, take the y. And do you want to plug it back into equation 1 or equation 2?
1.
Yeah, we definitely plug it in for 1 because the x is by itself. So fill that in right there. Okay. When I fill that back in, what's my equation going to look like?
X equals negative 7 minus 2y times negative 6. Or 2 times negative 6.
Right, the negative 6 is replacing the y. So once we plug that in, the y is gone.
So it would be follow and as.
Yep, so first thing we have to do is multiplication.
So you would do, it would be negative 7 plus 3.
Right, negative 2 times negative 6, that's a plus 12.
And you would have 5 as your answer.
And we would have negative 7 plus 12, that does give me 5. Yeah, very good. Any question on that one? Alright, that's pretty much it with substitution. Okay. So I'm just going to ask you, which equation would be the easiest there to get a letter by itself?
The first
number 1. Actually, you could do either.
You could do either, but there is one that's easier.
One would be easier since it's not negative.
Yes, I would do the one that's not a negative. I would do the one that's a positive, which is which one? Well, we're looking at the single letter.
The single variable, number 2.
So then the bottom.
Yeah. The easiest letter to get by itself here is y.
This one about like the x.
Yeah.
And all you'd have to do is move the negative 4x to the other side. How about that one? Which equation there is the easiest letter to get by itself?
Number 2.
Equation 2, which letter?
Y.
The y. Because all you'd have to do is move negative 9x to the other side. Yep. Yeah, but there wouldn't be anything different in those problems that I haven't already shown. Okay, so just a reminder, homework. Is the 5.2 Part 2 worksheet on Schoology. Tomorrow we'll go over that worksheet, and then we will do the review in class, and I will be after school tomorrow in case anybody needs to stop by for extra help.